I'm going to show the process I used to build this bottle. This is one of the bottles I used in the assignment examples. It comes from the Snuggle Scentables project that I had worked on. So this would be a polyethylene bottle, so it's going to be opaque, so it's not going to be clear. But the main feature about this that I want to emphasize is that it has a ruled surface. We're going to talk about labeling techniques for blow molded bottles. So a ruled surface is this front area here where we can put a label on it. A ruled surface, imagine you're wrapping a piece of paper on something like a sphere or something like that is not a ruled surface because you can't wrap a piece of paper on it. So this is very critical in labeling. Quite often when I do a project, we'll determine it's going to be a shrink label, it's going to be direct printing, or it's going to be a PSL, which is a pressure sensitive label. And that needs a ruled surface. So the equipment can basically put a sticker on here and it'll curve in one direction and be straight in the other direction. So I'm going to build this bottle with that in mind and try to do all the sculpting based around that ruled surface. And then I'm going to put the label on it and then do some rendering techniques. So let's see, I think I have the build sequence here. All right, so these are all the steps. I'll try to go through this relatively quickly. So the main thing is creating this flat surface. So I've thought about this. I had an idea in mind. So I'm not really discovering too much. I had a specific goal that I wanted to go after to do this. So if you look at this from the side view, let's just take a look here and go to the right side. So we can see the main thing is this angle here from the bottom coming up. I want to angle the surface in. I don't want to go straight up because it would get kind of clunky. So I'm trying to, instead of curving it up like some other bottles, I'm going to go straight up to this more tapered feeling at the top and then blend the sides in with these compound curves. So that was a decision I made, a little bit of back and forth to figure out how that was going to work. So once I made that determination, I wanted to start off with the ruled surface and then do the bottom part. So the ruled surface I created here. Well, let's start with this part here. I did the outlines. I kind of ultimately wanted to have this shape. Let's go to the front. So this was the profile. There is going to be a measuring dispensing cup at the bottom. So I'm just imagining that's down there. I am going to be using we, the company, and I decided to use a stock cap, a stop flip cap closure that has a Sequest valve. Sequest is a brand. It's actually a silicone valve. So it can be an inverted bottle without any leaking. And then over that was going to be a measuring cup. So that's where we sort of started down at the bottom. Dimensionally, that's where that's coming from. So I needed to determine how I was going to sculpt this bottom. And then this is the reverse curve at the top. A lot of this form language came right from the company. They did a lot of extensive exploration on the equities they have in form. So the whole Snuggle brand has this angled top, and quite often the bottles have a reverse curve where it curves in and then it goes positive on both sides. So those are brand equities that aren't just arbitrary decisions. So that's also part of designing structures like this, that we have to understand the functionality. It's a squeezable bottle. It's going to be upside down. You can measure from it or you can just dispense directly from it. And then this form language all comes together to make a design. So this is a quick summation of how that works. And then, of course, this particular design was to take a look at a ruled surface for the label. So once made that determination, I had to do let's go back to perspective. So there's a couple of functions here to get this whole thing started. First part is drawing this bottom part. I want to come down to the bottom here that's going to unite with the closure. So I have that dimension down at the bottom. So all this is a revolve. Let's put the C-plane on the bottom, C-plane top. So if we do the revolve function, let's go into our surface tools. And we have revolve. So it's selecting the item we want to revolve, enter. And then we need to select a center point, top center guideline, top and bottom. And then we're going to have this guide circle comes around so we can determine how we're going to do this. So what I did was I did it 180 degrees. What I try to do when I do bottles, and we're going to talk about this, when you mold a bottle, there's a parting line on the left and the right. Usually you don't have your parting line on the front, but we'll talk about those exceptions. So I'm going to build my parts in with this parting line in mind as I do that. So that's why I just built half of it. And it's going to be easier because whatever I do on this front side, I'm just going to mirror it around to the other side, and then we'll be done with the bottle. So that's how I created that part. Now that part is going to engage with our ruled surface. For me, the ruled surface was critical, this angle. So I'm doing a rule, instead of taking a curved line at the top and a curved line in the bottom and lofting them, I am lofting these three lines instead. It's another way of lofting. I'm lofting left to right. So if we use the loft tool, that creates that surface right there. So I'm just going to keep undoing, so I'm going to use this tutorial in class. So with these two parts in mind, I'm going to take this part here. I have this little guideline, so I can use that to bring this over. So let's just move a copy of that part. So again, like I've done before, I went back and forth a little bit. I didn't just bang these out. I did a few, did a little bit of trial and error to try to figure out what's going on. So you can see these two surfaces are intersecting one another. So I'm going to trim those down so I can get this edge right here and have this part, and then I can build the rest of my ruled surface and trim that out. So that's the function that happened here. So if we go with our trim tool and we select the cutting object, so I'm going to take I'm going to use, what am I doing? I'm going to use the rule surface as my cutting object. Enter. And then I want to eliminate the front of this part here. So you can see how that just cut that away. And then if I get rid of the ruled surface, I have this part right over here. So with that in mind, I now have the bottom curve of the ruled surface. So if we look at that from the front, and we can see how that is going to start to form this. So this was good. I liked how this looked. This came down and curved really nicely. But what I want to do is continue the line work all the way up here to create my label. So I'm looking at some of the art that we have. They have this nice asymmetrical label, and they got the Centables logo and all the other graphic elements in there. So I'm using that as a bit of a guide to figure out how this was going to work. And I have this little space here at the top, which was very critical. So from this view, what I want to do is just create some line work. So I'm going to go with my curve tools. So I have ortho on. So I'm going to start off. I was going to do this kind of quickly. I know I want to go tangent to this curve. So I'm going to come up here and just make a point and then start to curve over. So now I'm going to turn ortho off. And I'm going to come in here. I'm sort of arbitrarily just sort of picking dots because we can move them around. And what I did was I came here and then I came up and I snapped. I'm not sure if that's going to snap right now. I think we need to put near on so I can snap to that line. So I'm just going to snap over here for demonstration purposes. I'm going to show you what happens to this line. So I'm snapping to that line up there. Right click to stop the curve. So now I have this and I can move these around. I know this is tangent here, so that's good, but I can move these control points around. And that's how I created this curve. This curve is traveling through space, which is not part of our design, but it'll still function. So we can see it's coming from the front here and it's going back in space to that center line. So you can see that curve. I don't need that type of curve, but I do want to snap to this line up at the top. And that's going to be critical when I do my final trim split here on the ruled surface. So that is okay in this scenario, even though that's not how I wanted it. So that's how I did both of these lines. Just took a moment to figure that out. The tangent point is actually critical because this is going to be my label area. So let's get rid of that. So that's how I created those two lines. So what I did was I took those two and I connected them with the line down here at the bottom. I extracted this line and just joined them together. And let's just go into wireframe so we can see that. Wireframe. So here I have this nice kind of teardrop shape. It is traveling through space, but we're not going to worry about that right now. So what I want to do is take this ruled surface that I have right here and trim that out with this line. So let's go to the front view. And I have to do this from the front view so it trims clean. This is all one continuous line, and I believe I closed it here at the top, so it's all closed. This little space is going to be critical for my radiusing. At the end, I'm going to radius all this, and I want that to come to a point, but I need room for the radius, and you'll see how that works. So now I'm going to go back to the trim tool, and I'm going to select my cutting object, which is this line, and enter. And I want to select the ruled surface, this flat surface, in the part that I want to eliminate, which will be out here. So I'm going to click out here, and it took away the part that I don't want. So now I have created this three-dimensional surface, this curved ruled surface that I have. Let's go back into we can see that right over here. So I'm just going to undo that and go back to shaded. So that's this surface right here that I just created. So right now what I can do is just take these parts that I created here and just mirror them to the other side. So now I have them front and back. I'm doing this symmetrical front to back. So now I know I have this perfect ruled surface that I can put a PSL label on it. And the rest of it, I want it to sculpt. Quite often, a PSL ruled surface kind of dictates our form. And sometimes it gets in the way. We want to be very sculptural and organic about it. But this ruled surface is this big flat area. So I'm trying to make it as unflat looking as possible by giving it this nice kind of a teardrop profile. So there's no sharp edges or corners to make it look like a big billboard panel. And then I'm going to do lofting to the sides here to create these other organic shapes. So that's sort of the logic that's happening with that. So now I can bring up that other line work that I had from the first layout. I have this thing, it's on center. And then I have this one on this side, and it's on center. And everything's lined up straight across that angle on the top. So I'm going to do a network of curves. So I need this curve on the top here. So what I did with this, let's see, let's go to the top. I took my the ellipse tool, make sure I'm in my curves down here. So this took a little bit of maneuvering. I want the relationship of this corner right here to be somewhat sharp off the ruled surface so I can radius it. If I make it too curved, it's going to blend into the front surface and there won't be an edge anymore. It'll blend in too nicely. Sometimes we do want that, but in this situation, I want to define that ruled surface by these side panels with a bit of an edge that I can radius so we can see that edge. That's part of the aesthetic for this. So with this ellipse tool in mind, what I did was I took it, I clicked over here, and I think let me put the ortho back on. I came pretty far over here, and I just started making my oval. You can see I'm kind of moving it around here. So that's a little bit too curvy. So I think what I did, I probably created it, and then I just scaled it left to right, maneuvered it until I got this curve that has quite a bit of tension to it. And it gives us a nice relationship from the ruled surface to that part right there. And I did that on both sides. The back one's a little easier because I have less distance to travel, so I can get a nice edge there. So that's how that was created. That takes a little bit of time to figure that out. So ultimately, I'll end up with this curve, these curves that I have at the top here. This one. So once I made the curve, then I looked at it from the front view and made sure it lined up perfectly with my edge. It's critical that all of this lines up. So we have that nice angled top, which comes from the form language of the brand. And then I did this one in the back. So those are ready to go. So with those in mind, it begins to start our network. We have this curve, we have the center curve, and then we're going to have the curves which come from the ruled surface here. And then the fourth curve that we're going to use for this network is down here. There's a curve right in here. So I just extracted the curve that came from that revolve that we had made originally. And then there's one on this side also. So what we have to do to create these on both sides is I've been showing everybody how to come into our snaps and sort of disengaging the snaps and then going to our select subcomponents of objects. So that is the long way to do that. So the shorter way to do that is to do shift control. Shift control, let's see now, hold on. If I select this surface, I'm selecting the entire part. I want to select just this edge in the front. Let's just move in a little bit. So if I do shift control, I can select just that edge. So I want that edge. So now I'm going to release that. I'm going to hold just shift and go to this line here. And I'm going to go shift control again and go to that back edge. So that are three lines in that one axis for our network of curves. Now I'm just going to do shift because I've already extracted this line down here. It's going to ask me for the curve. I want the curve. And I'm just holding shift to get this curve up here. And that's just sitting there, so it's not asking me. So there's a network. So what I want to do is create a surface out of that network. So that network is over here. Where is my network? Surface. Surface from network of curves. So I was going to select that. And we can control different parameters on that, but I'm just going to leave that alone at this point. I'm going to say, okay. So there is the curve that blends all of that together. So it's a nice kind of an organic feel. It's a bit of an ergonomic too. My hand kind of comes around there and wraps nicely. And then my forefingers and my thumb can get down in the bottom of this teardrop shape. And it's a very squeezable shape. To do that. That's part of the functionality and the ergonomics of this particular bottle. It is polyethylene, so it will be somewhat flexible. So that's the creating that surface. I did the same thing on this back surface. It's just a little less detailed. So I'm just going to undo that. And that brings us to this point. So now I have all these surfaces, the front and the back. So what I did was I took all of those. All I did was select them and just attach them. So join, the join tool over here, brought them all together. So the next part, let's just, I have it stitched here. Okay, so let's do it. Let's join this, this. I have two down here. Surface. Then I have the back surface here. Okay, there they are. So if I join, it blinks like that, so they're all nicely together. So I am going to close the bottom, but let's not close that now. Let's build our little top. Our little top has a subtle little kind of a curve on the top here. So I'm also going to do a network. But what I did was I took a curve from the front view right here. Let's go to front. Nice gentle curve right there. So that was just a bit of a guess to get that nice soft top on there so it's not completely flat on the top. So what we can do is we can do a network with that curve. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hold Shift Control, and I'm going to select these edges and that edge. So now I have that whole, oops, this one didn't select. There we go. Now I'm going to hold just Shift and select that curve that I created on the top right there, like that. And then go back to our network. So that blended that all the way across. We have this nice kind of curve that blends all that together. So that surface I am now able to stitch to the rest of this. I could have done that first. That's okay. So if we take, well, what I did was I took this surface and I attached it to that surface, which brought me over here. And then did I close the bottom yet? And then cap planar holes for the bottom, which we've done many times before. So now I have this solid. I'm going to show quickly volumetrics. I'm going to do some radiusing on here, but as you're building, quite often you'll have a goal on a certain volume that you want to accomplish. So we can check that. So let's go into our command tool here and put in volume first. Let's see, volume, and then we can click on units. So I always use liter. So I'm going to click on liter. So we'll do that first, set up the units that we want to do it in. And then it says select our solid. So it has to be a solid. It cannot be surfaces. So if we select our solid and then press enter, it will give you our volumetric. So this is like it's over a liter. So that's much too big. I think I need to be close to like half that volumetrically. But I just want to show that. So if you're working on something and you have an idea about how much volume you want in there, now, this is a little bit of a rough estimate because do have to account for wall thicknesses of the plastic, which is a small amount, but it can add up. And then we have overflow or fill line. We never fill up a bottle completely 100% because during the assembly and filling line, it'll spill all over the place. So usually there's like a 2% fill level. This particular closure is filled from the bottom, but what they do is they turn it upside down. And since this bottle does not have a flat end, it has to go in something called a puck, which is a piece, quite often we'll 3D print them, that you put the bottle in upside down and the puck holds it upright. So we can get into the filling machine and it fills it from the bottom, puts the cap on it, and then it gets inverted and labeled. So that's just part of the process when you do an inverted bottle like this. An inverted bottle like this quite often is called a toggle, which is sort of a combination of tube and bottle. It's a category that has been created. So when you're blow molding something that sort of looks like a tube, which this kind of does, they call them toddles. This is more bottle than tube, so they would probably just call this an inverted bottle. So that's just a little bit about how this is manufactured and how this is going to work. So volumetrics, you can check that and get a feeling for what it is. I am ultimately going to take this and shrink this down quite a bit because I wanted to get it close to the exact volume that I need. Uh, Sometimes you have to maintain a height or a width or a depth. So you might have to check your volume and you might have to redo your design to maintain some of your constraints that you have to work with. So that can be a little bit more challenging. Here, I'm just going to literally just shrink the whole thing down and get it to work because even the custom closure that I'm going to work with, there's many sizes. So I'll be able to get one to fit in there. And then I have that outside cup, which has its own volumetric constraints too, but that'll be an injection molded part, which is a little bit different. So that's how that worked. Let's see, how did I do the radiusing? So this last part is basically the fillets, which we've done before. Fillet edge. So this is why I have these surfaces not blending. I have a bit of an edge here because I want that, because I want to see a radius here. If I made that too sharp, it might not be able to radius at all. Uh, in this case, we would do this on both sides. So I don't have to hold shift because I have the tool selected and it's going to just come around like that. So I have everything selected. So enter. I'm going to make sure I have handles linked. Yes. I want all of this to be the same. And then I'm going to select just one of the handles. And I forget exactly what I did here. I never keep track. What did I do? Let me try. Um, Let me try an eighth. See if this works. Oh, that's tight. Okay, see, that's a lot tighter than I want. So that was 1/8 inch, but you can see how I can get this radius. And the relationship of this ruled surface to these side panels is very similar because my radius is pretty consistent. Sometimes I've done bottles where I have a nice relationship between these two surfaces, but this top one blends too far to zero, and I get a very irregular radius edge. This is pretty good. I mean, it looks pretty consistent and even, so I'm going to get a nice highlight on that edge. I did go a little bit bigger than this. So let's just see here. Oh, all right. So I'll just do it again. I think probably I did. I want to get this correct so I can show the top edge. Okay, edge, enter. That was 1/8. So it looks like I did close to a quarter. So let's see, 0.25. Enter, enter. Here we go. Okay, that's better. That's very nice. Great radius. You see, that's why I needed the space up here. Because if these radiuses start to conflict with one another, it can work, but it'd get a little risky there. So then the last radius thing that we would do would be across the top. So it would be the same function. Fill edge, and then we would just select, move in. Now this is kind of where it gets a little challenging sometimes because you're radiusing and then you're radiusing again. And it's a lot of back and forth. And sometimes you don't leave enough tolerances or the radius get in the way with one another. So it can be difficult. But I think I worked this out so I could do this pretty smoothly. So enter, and I have the handles linked. Now again, so this one I'm probably going to do quite a bit less. So I think this might be at 1/8. Let's try 1/8. 0.12, enter, enter. Okay. So you can see it's getting a little odd. But it's not bad. It worked. I'm getting a nice soft edge up in here. With plastic bottles and even especially glass bottles, we don't want too many hard edges. This is a relatively hard edge, but it's subtle and it's inboard. It's not like this is a big exposed edge right here. So it's nice that that's pretty soft up on the top there. Okay, so that's the radiusing solution for that. So that is the bottle that's done. So I brought that over into another layer. And I have that over here. So I detailed the cap. It has this little push up inside, and the volumetrics on that are quite critical. I think I've sized this down now so it can fit. So here's where my label will be on this front panel. So right now I have a separate panel there, and I have the art on it. So let's just look at this into rendered. So there's my label. I basically just I didn't design the label and nobody else really designed it. I just took an existing label on the bottle that went into production. This is not the production bottle. This was just an alternative. I wanted to show how ruled surfaces work. So I just took the art and kind of just cobbled it up a little bit and did some Photoshop just to get this to work. But this is the active label where active surface where this label could be applied to. The actual bottle that we did make was a very organic loft. It did not have a ruled surface on it at all, so we used a shrink label. So the whole thing had graphics on it. So I just took this piece of art from that shrink label just to demonstrate how this was going to work. So this is pretty straightforward. This is just decal, which we've done before. So you select an item, you go into properties, and then you select the green square like we did last semester. And I have this label on here. Very straightforward. I know this is a curved surface, but I did it flat. Flat works when you have a subtle curve, we don't need to do a full circumference for this label. So that's how that was created. I probably did that from the front view. So when we get involved with rendering now, so this is polyethylene, so this is pretty simple. So I selected the bottle, and if I go into my render tools, And materials, I think I have this blue surface here, and I used paint. And I just have a gloss reflector on it. Now it's polyethylene, so it's not as shiny as a PET. So it's a little bit of a duller surface, just a little bit. But this is a judgment call. Sometimes we want it kind of shiny looking to make it look interesting. So you can make it a little bit shinier, but quite often polyethylene is sort of a matte surface. Polyethylene is like a milk jug or laundry detergent bottles. Those are all polyethylene. Okay, so that was just creating that surface. I think down here I have this little measuring cup is sort of a translucent part. So I think I did what did I do? So I did plastic and just added transparency. So I'm not using glass because it's an injection molded polypropylene, so it's not going to be crystal clear like a PET. So this is a little bit of understanding the materials. I'm going to bring in a lot of bottles made out of these different materials, and we'll talk about the characteristics and the features of these different kinds of materials. So this closure down here is polypropylene, and it's translucent. So it's a somewhat of a flexible material, so it can snap on and off very easily. So that was it on the materials. So the rest of it is, like I mentioned this before, when I start to get ready for rendering, it's a good idea to set up a view. So I moved the perspective around, got it to a point of view that I like, and then I went into my named views and I saved it. So this is the view I like. I liked how it showed the bottle and the point of view. So once you do that, you can save that and then come down into your set views. And here I have it, bottle one, view one. So if I click on that, this will automatically come into that point of view. Because when you start working with lighting and environments and moving things around and taking a look at stuff, you keep moving it, it's hard to get back to that point of view. So if you save your point of view, it's very easy to snap back. So here it is. I'm in rendered mode. Not bad. It looks pretty good. I have the floor on, the deck, and it looks pretty good. But as you can see, the cup it's supposed to be tinted. And in render viewed, again, all translucent and metallic surfaces don't show up very well. I get a little bit of a shine on here, and the label looks pretty good. There's a little bit of a dark area in here, and that comes from the environment that I have set up. This is just the basic environments here. We have background. I have a 360 view that I'm going to show. I'm not using a solid color or a gradient. That can also be done. I'm using some lighting. So I'm using the Rhino Studio 8. It's pretty generic. It's not that sensational. And then for the reflections that we're starting to see here, there's a little bit of light and this darkness in the front, and some of the backlighting is coming from Rhino Studio 8, but I'm checking use custom environment for reflections. So the little bit of that lighting is coming in here. So we can move this around. You can see how the light changes and what that is. See those little like light areas in there? That's coming from the environment because they have light fixtures up here. So I'm working with that. There are many other opportunities for environments. If we go through here and we can import from library, there's a whole series of different things here. Experiment with these. These are elaborate environments that reflect into your object. I use a lot of this for glass because there's glass reflects environments. Glass can look kind of dead unless you put it into an environment. I'm going to emphasize building a little environment. Now, I've done this on a couple of other ones. I'm going to do that here. I kind of like to control and not have too much drama in the reflection. It gets a little distracting. I just want to emphasize the design. So let's go back to, actually, let's kick back. I'm going to go to my layers, and I have a background that I had set up. And I have done this before. Let's go into shaded. So I have this rectangular shape here is a light. It's this rectangular light up here. So if you go under your render tools and you select that, you can make a rectangle. And you can make it any size you want. And it has this little arrow in the middle, which tells you which way the light is emitting from that rectangle. So it's like a big light, kind of evenly disperses the light. There are hotspots. You can create like cone lighting and spot lighting and linear lighting and things like that. It's lots of different effects you can do. But for these kinds of sculptural bottle shapes, these work out really well. So that's these two have a backlighting and a front lighting. And then this other opaque panel, I have that. It's just a surface. And I did that in black. And these are vertical. So we look at these from the front view. These are sticking straight up because I want them to reflect into the bottle. So they would imitate things in the environment. You know, it could be a wall or a lamp is standing there, whatever it might be. And we can control these in a very simple, basic way and get them to reflect into our object. So they're straight up. And if I look at them from the top, the lights I have shining up into the front because my point of view, again, is right here. It's slightly off to the right. I'm coming in a nice 3/4 inch view. So I want to have a nice highlight over here to the left. And then I have this light coming and bouncing into the back to make that back edge roll around. And then I have this black panel, which is going to give us a little bit of a dark area. This will be a little less pronounced because this bottle isn't that shiny, but it'll give us a little bit of contrast there. So that's me setting up my own environment and using the Rhino 8 Studio at the same time. So here's an example. Instead of trying to set up that perspective again, I'll just go to my view and I pick my view and voila, and I'm back. So how did I do that? Okay, these are the lights. The lights, when you go into rendered mode, you will not see. But that black panel, I have that off to the side out of my viewport because you will see that. It is an object sitting in space. So once this is all set up, another way to look at this, we can go to rendered mode, gives us a feel what this looks like. So now those lights are kind of giving me an awkward hotspot here. So in rendered mode, it's not the greatest point of view. So what we would do is go up to rendered. Now rendered can take some time depending on how you set up the cycles for the rendering part. There's another way to quickly take a look, which I like to do. It's very accessible. It's go into ray trace mode here. Now ray traced will go through this and imitate what the rendering will look like relatively quickly. Now, quickly is because I set up the cycles. The cycles down here I have on 10. That's really, really low. But it's good enough for us to see how our object is going to look. I think when you first come in here, it's about 100, which is huge. When I ultimately do this rendering, I'm probably only going to do, well, I'll do like 500. You can go 1,000, 1,500, depending on what kind of a resolution that you want. So here, this is giving me what this is going to look like. Now, I think this looks pretty good. If you look at the cup now, the cup has a nice translucence to it. I added a tint to it, and that highlight on the front is pretty pronounced because this is a somewhat shiny plastic. That dark band over here is the black panel, and then I have some backlighting. So that front lighting is now hitting this label here and giving me a little bit of a glow. So it's a little interesting. It's a little bit much. I could move it over and play with it and get it to go a little more to the side. But I think it looks pretty good. It makes it kind of shiny. And then that backlighting, I have this nice glow in this reverse curve area, which looks quite nice. Now the black area up in the bottle is a little less pronounced. I have a little bit of contrast. It's giving me some of this dark richness in here, which isn't bad. And then the Rhino environment plus my panels is giving us some nice highlights on the top. So I think that looks pretty nice. I'm not doing a lot with the background behind this. I'm just keeping this really nice and clean because I'm probably going to trim this out pretty tight just to show this design because there'll be several designs to show when this happens. So that's building this bottle with a ruled surface in a polyethylene and a clear cup and an upside down type bottle, and then some simple rendering and materials techniques.